So our webinar today is entitled 3 Essential Rules for Cultivating a Culture of Mine Safety. And facilitating our webinar today will be Eric Chow. Eric is a solutions specialist here at Intelex who specializes in the mining sector. And today, he's going to be outlining the key lessons that were presented by Joseph Main, who is the Director for Mine Safety and Health Administration in a recent leadership lessons profile. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Eric and we can get started.
Thanks, JP. Welcome everybody for joining us today. Again, as JP mentioned, my name is Eric Chow. I'm one of the account executives here at Intelex. And my team, we focus mostly on the metals and mining industries and companies within that. So today's webinar is 3 essential rules for cultivating a culture of mine safety. The agenda we set up is pretty straightforward. We're going to start at the top about Joe Main, the director of MSHA. Some of you here are from the mining industry. You will know who he is. Just looking at the attendee list, there are some other folks not in mining, so this could be a good introduction. We'll also talk about the Upper Big Branch coal mine disaster. Some of you may be familiar with that as well, and for some of you, this will be brand new. We're going to transition into the ending the cycle of intensity and complacency. So what is that, and what are some things we can do to manage that? That will transition us into the 3 rules, and we'll end off with a quick introduction about Intelex technologies and who we are. Okay, so let's get started. So Joe Main is the director of MSHA, so Mine Safety and Health Association. He's also the Assistant Secretary of Labor for Mine Safety and Health. Formerly, he was also the Safety and Health Administrator for the United Mine Workers of America. So very deep experience working and building a safe environment within the mining industry. Very recently, Joe was actually profiled in a book called Paths to Making a Difference, Leading in Government by Paul Lawrence and Mark Abramson. And in this book, about 25 leaders were interviewed and asked to share their experience and leadership advice, and Joe Main just talked about how to do that in a mine safety capacity. Very interesting read. If you're interested, take a look at it. It is available on Amazon. He drew upon his deep wealth of knowledge, and specifically in regards to MSHA's investigation of the Upper Big Branch coal mine disaster. So we're going to take a little bit more details into that. So the Upper Big Branch coal mine disaster occurred on April the 5th, 2010, about 1,000 feet underground in Riley County, West Virginia. 29 of 31 miners were killed at this site. It was the worst mining accident in the United States since 1970. Prior to that, 38 miners were killed at Finley Coal Company's mine in Kentucky. After the accident, MSHA came in, and on December the 6th, 2011, MSHA concluded its investigation and decided that the disaster was entirely preventable and it was a coal dust explosion. The root cause of the tragedy, MSHA said, was unlawful policies and practices of the company. So really, really tragic. And if we go through the investigation details, we can see here that over the past 15 years, Upper Big Branch Mine had a history of violations and citations that MSHA had identified. What we can see is over the past 15 years, an increasing trend here in violations that unfortunately obviously resulted in a huge tragic accident in 2010. What we also see beyond just the number of violations is the cost of these violations. So over the past 5 years, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year. What this really shows us is that the ability to promote a safe mine culture is not only good for morale and good for brand development, but really is great in terms of ROI, not just decreasing insurance rates and reducing man hours away from work, but also reducing violations and citations. Ultimately, MSHA issued 369 citations at that time, assessing $10.8 million in penalties. Alpha Natural Resources eventually bought out Massey Energy, the company that owns Upper Big Branch, and settled its corporate criminal liabilities with the U.S. Attorney for $209 million. Upper Big Branch mine will be permanently sealed by the summer 2012, so a real tragedy. Now, most of us here are not in the same position as Upper Big Branch. We're not knowingly or willingly negligent of some of the things going on. That's why we're attending this webinar. But incidents do happen, and we need to be aware of that and be aware of what are the things that we can do to manage that. This ties in very nicely to what Joe Main calls ending the cycle of intensity and complacency. So quote here from Joe Main: "You can look away for a second, you can let your guard down for a second, and bad things can happen here. We've got to stay focused on mine safety. It has to be the priority every minute of every day. And we have to be out there with a find and fix mentality. Find it and fix it before it hurts somebody." So what is the cycle of intensity and complacency? Well, it happens not just in the mining safety, but also in all aspects. When something happens, like a personal injury or an environmental spill, there is initially a large flurry of activity and discussions and meetings, and people plan things to do to prevent further injuries, and a lot of action is discussed. And then time goes by, people become a little bit more complacent, action doesn't happen, and all of a sudden things start falling through the cracks, people start forgetting until another accident happens, and then we go through that cycle again. So that's definitely something that we want to try and avoid, and we need a way for us to automate that. And one of the ways that we look to that is by leveraging plan, do, check, act. So having a systematic process in place to make sure that everyone is on top of their game. And this ties in very nicely to the 3 rules that Joe Main discussed.